I don't think I could live with not knowing what happened to someone I loved. All the uncertainty, the what ifs, my mind would literally go to the worst case scenarios and just stay there. Some people go missing and are never found. They could have moved halfway across the world and changed their name, or they could have been murdered and buried just 2 blocks away from their house. That huge range is just uncanny to me. As new evidence gets uncovered and forensic technology advances, more and more mysteries are getting closer to being solved, and therefore people are getting closer to closure. What is up, you guys? Hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host Eamon Hassan, and welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about the top 10 unsolved mysteries that we're close to solving. Starting us off at number 10 is the death of Alonzo Brooks. Now, this one comes straight from Unsolved Mysteries, and it's a case that really pissed me off. 22-year-old Alonzo and his friends went to a party in rural Kansas that was about an hour's drive from their hometown. Now keep in mind, this is rural Kansas. The mentality is different, and the party was full of Hicks, and Alonzo was the only black man there. Racial slurs were thrown around, and one by one his friends left the party thinking one of the other friends would be dropping Alonzo home. The next day his mum woke to find Alonzo still not home. She called all of his friends and no one could get a hold of him. After getting the sheriff involved and multiple search investigations taking place, Alonzo was nowhere to be found. A month after his disappearance, his family and friends were finally allowed to search themselves, and within 10 minutes they found Alonzo's body in a creek. He had been murdered in a hate crime, and this is supported by many people from that rural town writing in comments like they know whose house Alonzo's body was stored in, they know who killed him, or that they'll never reveal the names. However, after the reboot of the show, many tips have come in about the cases, and Alonzo's could be the first one to get solved. Actual names of the perpetrators had been forwarded to the FBI, which has caused the case to become reopened. Let's get those shitheads. Coming in at number 9 is the yogurt shop. December 6, 1991. Firefighters were rushing to the scene of a fire blazing inside a I can't believe it's yogurt shop in Austin, Texas. When they finally got there, the men found the dead bodies of 4 young girls in the back of the store. 2 were identified as employees, 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison and Eliza Thomas, 13-year-old Amy Ayers, and Harbison's younger sister Sarah. It looked like they had planned a sleepover at the shop after closing up, but they were found bound and gagged and all shot in the head. Eventually 4 men were arrested in connection to the murder, 2 of which actually confessed, but then rumors started going around that the confessions were forced. The 2 that confessed were convicted and the other 2 had their charges dropped. However, in 2009, both arrested men were released after lack of evidence against them. There was only 1 piece of DNA found at the crime scene, and it belonged to none of the 4 men. Most of the evidence was most likely lost in the fire, but as of February of this year, it was revealed that the FBI could have the key to solving the case, but they're refusing to release that information due to privacy concerns. The single strand of DNA found can't be used to identify a single suspect, but it could point to a person's male lineage, and this is known as family tree forensics. So my guesses are the FBI know the family of the man who killed the girls, but based on ethics don't want to reveal it to the families involved. But when was the last time the FBI didn't do something because it was unethical? At number 8 we have Julia Woodward. Back in 1979, 21-year-old Julia Woodward was at a San Francisco airport terminal hoping to find a job near Lake Tahoe. She was originally from San Rafael and was last seen at the airport. 2 months after she went missing, her skeletal remains were found, and it seemed like she'd been hit in the head with a large rock. Her legs were zip-tied, she had been gagged, band-aids covered her eyes, and there was hair and blood everywhere. 40 years later, DNA on her pants led officers to murderer Charles Gary Sullivan. His attorney claimed that he must have slept with her, but that doesn't mean he killed her. But according to the Deputy Attorney General, the crime fits Gary's pattern since he was a prime suspect in 2 other murders where the bodies were found close to Julia's. When investigators started getting more interested in him, he fled Reno and changed his appearance. In 2007, he kidnapped and raped a girl in Nevada and was charged for it, so the pattern is definitely there, as is the evidence. Gary's lawyer filed a motion to withdraw from his defense, but Gary remains in custody and his trial is next January. So this case will legitimately get solved next year, which, I mean, woohoo. Filling at number 7 slot is LILLIE Oglesby. 69-year-old evangelist and mother of 8 was found brutally murdered in her own home back in May of 2004. LILLIE had no known enemies, and her children claimed that she was always very cautious and would keep all of her doors locked. Her son Dal went on to say she would not open the door for someone she didn't know, implying the killer was an acquaintance of hers or maybe even a friend. On that dreadful night, Lily's son Vernon decided to check on his mum as he left work, but when he got to the house at around 9 PM, the front door was ajar and the storm door was also unlocked. The TV was on but the living room was empty, so he then went to his parents' bedroom to find his mum in a pool of her own blood by her bed. She had died from multiple blunt force trauma, and the case remained cold all these years. Recently, however, a retired detective asked Officer Tackett to relook at the case, and now she's rereading all the notes and submitting new DNA evidence. Forensic DNA investigation was only in its infancy back then, but now it's a lot more advanced. Tackett also tracked down friends, the family's neighbors at the time, and more. My bet is on the DNA evidence getting a match or link on the database, which will hopefully lead them to the killer. Now at number 6 is KATELYN Markham. Back in August of 2011, 21-year-old KATELYN Markham vanished from her home in Fairfield, only for her remains to be found in a wooded area 2 years later. Her dad Dave put out a public plea to Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones, asking him to reopen his daughter's unsolved case, claiming the Fairfield police just did an inadequate job. The sheriff said he would relook at the case, and it has since been active. The team is hoping that looking at the case with a fresh set of eyes will reveal something that was missed before. Now, there are 3 possible theories to explain her death: accidental, homicidal, or drug overdose. The coroner ruled her death a homicide. PI J. Ryan Green was hired to work on her case, and he revealed that a new piece of evidence has been found and is being processed for DNA, but nothing further can be publicly said. These cases just leave you on the edge of your seat, literally, because you don't know what's gonna happen. Coming in at number 5 is Erica Baker. 21 years ago, 9-year-old Erica Baker vanished from Miami Valley, never to be seen again. Sergeant Bob Green and cold case detective Vincent Mason turned the cold case back into an open and active case as they tried to crack down and find out exactly where her remains are. Christian Gabriel confessed to accidentally hitting Erica with his van near an intersection in Kettering. Christian and his passenger Jan Franks both had criminal backgrounds and didn't want to call the police, so they shoved Erica inside the van and took off. He served 6 years in prison for that and was released in 2011 and is still refusing to say what he did to her. Officers are trying to put as much pressure as they can on Christian to reveal the information, to the point of trying to see if they can get another warrant for him just to scare him into confessing. Would he rather confess or go to jail for however many more years? At number 4 is Xavier Dupont de Leron. I know I mentioned this case in a recent video, but updates have been made, so I thought I would share. Back in April of 2011, the family's neighbor got suspicious when the Leron's home was boarded up and decided to call the police. The family was nowhere to be found until a letter came saying they had fled to the US since they were DEA agents. That was fake, and after several police visits to the house, the bodies of the wife Agnes, the 4 kids and 2 dogs were all found buried in their garden. Xavier's body was not there, and neither was his car. Everyone had been shot by a rifle that Xavier had inherited from his dad only 3 weeks prior. Apparently he was under crippling debt and had no money left, and as a count, he didn't want his children or the public to know the family was ruined. He didn't want his kids to suffer any hardships either, so apparently he thought killing them was the best thing to do. After he fled, he didn't even hide. He was still using his credit card at places and waved at a security camera in southeastern France before taking off with his rifle. If he did commit suicide, the body was never found, but if he fled, he's still wanted. Tips have been pouring in at left, right, and center about this case, and one seemed to catch everyone's attention. Someone sent in a photo of who they believed to be Xavier in Chicago. The man looked so much like him, but you could tell he had some sort of facial work done. So now that the search has been narrowed down to one city, the ball is really rolling. How can someone just kill their entire family and just still sleep at night? Filling at number 3 slot is 13 Minutes, April 15th, 2004. Hairdresser Patrice Andres is working a regular day at his salon Tambus Trim and Tan located in Georgia. After a customer called to cancel their upcoming appointment, there was a 13-minute window in which no one knows what happened, but it was believed that's when Patrice went missing. Despite long searches taking place, her body was found 600 days later, 11 miles from the salon. The body was found without her wedding ring, meaning whoever has it is our perpetrator. So the case went from a missing person's case to a murder investigation ASAP Rocky. Now in the Unsolved Mysteries episode, we see her husband Rob talk about their marriage being quite happy. Patrice's son Pistol, who she had from a previous partner, said the two were having trouble and that Rob was quite a jealous man. After Patrice disappeared, Rob locked Pistol out of the house since the two just didn't get along. Despite having an alibi, Rob said things like he carried around her skull for hours and slept with her ashes. Her friends claim she hadn't been acting normal in the days prior to her disappearance, and viewers think the case can be solved with investigation into the cancelled appointment. Was it on purpose? Did that person cancel so Patrice could be alone for those 13 minutes? Submitted tips are forcing the direction of the case towards that, so hopefully the case will be solved sooner than we think. Now at number 2 is Nancy Theobald, November 17th, 1977. Nancy was a student at the University of Cincinnati at the time, and that day she was on her way home from a shift at Arby's. She was never seen again until a month later when her body was found near a creek near Beckett Road. Her arms were bound with rope, as was her neck, and she was partially naked. Heavy interrogations were done at the time of the crime, but unfortunately no arrests were made. These days, Butler County Sheriff Detective Joe Ventre has been working on the case and shared that based on previous evidence, new tests are being done and that he was not allowed to elaborate further than that. I hope that the new tests bring up some sort of results, because that poor family has been living with the worst case scenarios in their heads for 43 years. It's time to end their suffering. And finally, at number 1 is the BEAR Brook case. Back in 1985, 2 bodies were found wrapped in plastic bags inside some barrels at BEAR Brook State Park. And then fast forward to 2000, another 2 bodies were found. They were all either completely or partially skeletonized, but DNA profiling concluded that the woman was the mother of the youngest and oldest bodies found, and the 4th child is still unidentified, but rumored to be serial killer Terrence Rasmussen's daughter. In 2017, the woman was identified to be Denise Bowden, who had been missing since 1981, along with her daughter and boyfriend Bob Evans. DNA confirmed that a Robert Evans was the father of the middle body, but that was not his real name, and Denise wasn't the woman's real name either. Evans was soon exposed as serial killer Terry Rasmussen, aka the Chameleon Killer. Turns out the woman was Marilyse Elizabeth Honeychurch, and she had been missing from La Puente since 1978. She had 2 kids at the time and was dating Rasmussen. That year, around the time of her disappearance, she had left her home after arguing with her mum and never contacted her family again, because she was dead. Now it's unclear if Terry is the one who killed them or who the mother of the 4th child is, but advanced DNA testing is being used to help finally close the case. And that is it for today's video, guys. Have you seen Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix? Most of these cases aren't from the show. I think 2 or 3 are. Let me know what you guys think of the show and this video. As always, I've been your host, Ayman Hassan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!